Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us in our 2023 panel discussion around pregnancy and parenthood after baby loss. Joining us today, we have Dr. Charlotte Cousins from SAGE as our professional voice. We have Dr. Talitha Thomas as well as a parent voice who also has a bit of a clinical perspective within this too. And we have Emma Bell, the lovely Emma Bell from at TFMR Mamas, and a key part of Love Through Loss as well. I'm going to come to each of you just to introduce yourselves and just share a little bit about what baby loss awareness means for you, particularly from the aspect of pregnancy and parenthood after loss, that unique aspect to the evolution of loss for many families. Dr. Charlotte, I'm going to come to you first with that.
Sure. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really pleased to be a part of this today. As I think Lala said at the beginning, I'm a clinical psychologist and I specialise in working with couples and families as they navigate their often kind of difficult journey to and through parenthood. And sadly, as we all well know, often those difficult journeys can include loss along the way. And we know that when you've experienced loss, or pregnancy that's followed by a loss, that can bring such mixed feelings, feelings of real excitement, but also being kind of struck with the conflict of how do you manage those feelings of excitement alongside feelings of grief and such anxiety about the next baby and pregnancy. So yeah, I work with couples and families to support them kind of through this journey, helping them navigate subsequent pregnancies, and helping them to, I guess, find their way through that really difficult journey.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm going to come to you, Talitha, as well, and just get you to introduce yourself, where you are in your process of pregnancy and parenthood after loss, and what this week means to you from that perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Lala. So I have 3 children, 2 of whom passed away last year in April. And then my 3rd child is my daughter, Solovey, who is 4 months old now. Baby Loss Awareness Week, from this perspective, really empowers me to be able to share about my sons, not only to the general public, but also to my daughter, who is meant to know about her brothers. And so, yeah, through this, I found so many different resources and really learned and been encouraged and challenged by the different stories I'm hearing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Emma, I'm going to come to you. I know that this month is feeling particularly heavy for you. And I know that that's taken you almost a little bit by surprise in terms of where you are at in your pregnancy and parenthood journey after loss. So I'll just let you introduce yourself and share as much as you feel comfortable to around that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Emma, and I lost my first daughter, Willow, in October 2020. So I'm coming up to the anniversary on the 31st. I lost her in utero due to a diagnosis of Edwards syndrome, and we had a termination for medical reasons at the beginning of my 2nd trimester after 5 rounds of infertility and fertility treatment. And since then, we've gone through lots of subsequent treatments and then had a spontaneous pregnancy with my now living daughter, who is 11 months old. And this is my 3rd Baby Loss Awareness Week year, and I'm finding it probably the most difficult. And I think it's because I'm being confronted with a very real living trigger, not a trigger, but you know what I mean, a real living example of everything that we lost, because we didn't have living children before our before our loss, in terms of our parenthood journey. So we grieved everything we imagined and hoped we would have, and now I have this very real, growing, living being who's really showing me everything that we have lost and the family dynamic that we have lost because of our timeline they could have both existed at the same time alive had Willow have been well and not had Edwards syndrome. So I suppose I'm grieving a lot for not having two living children living side by side and siblings and all of that. So yeah, it's happening now. So I haven't had much time to reflect on it because it's all kind of hitting me as this week's unraveling, which I suppose is a good thing for this conversation. Perhaps, you know, we're doing it real time.
It's a real it's a living experience that you are navigating, and I think that's the thing about living with the grief of loving a baby who's not in your arms, is that it's not linear, and no matter how many subsequent pregnancies, children you go on, each one is unique. No one replaces the other. No one mitigates or soothes. And that's exactly where this conversation is so important, because I think that so many people get given those really unhelpful platitudes of, well, you'll have another baby, or I think a lot of people can feel quite themselves quite comforted and reassured when you go on to have another baby. And I think that is that something that Talitha, is that something that you would say that you've experienced as a parent? And how is that, what does that bring up for you, and how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I just think of I think we have been really clear that Sylvie is our third child. But there are a lot of people that I don't think they argue with us, but they would like to just recognize her as our child. From like different family members to well, maybe some people that were close to us that maybe now are not as close because they're not able to recognize our whole family for what it is. Yeah, and I think we've really sought to make it okay for people to talk about our sons. I have tattoos on my arms of their footprints. We have their names in our house as like a list of family members. But it does seem that it makes people really uncomfortable sometimes if I bring up all my children, even though they truly are all my children.
Is that an experience that you have had as well as a parent? You speak very vocally within the baby loss space, so anybody who follows you knows how important and how much you are a big advocate for education around language and including of babies within the narrative of a family. What's your experience been of that?
My experience is that we have always spoken about Willow as our first daughter, our first child, and it's not been, I think it's important to lead with how you want your family to be spoken about, and that takes a bit of, I want to say brazenness, but almost, because other people can feel quite confronted by that, and I think it can sometimes make people feel a bit uncomfortable based on their own beliefs around it or how they feel about it. But I think it's important that you speak about your family as you would do if your children were all living. And it helps other people feel confident to get on board with that and join you in speaking about your family, how you want your family to be recognised and spoken about. Even with that said, I've still had very close people to us say, this is your first, this is our first ex-member of the family, you know, and that's been difficult. And we've had to kind of say, you know, actually, this isn't, and this isn't our first, and this is our first living child in our situation. But it's not our first, right? So we've had to kind of advocate for that quite strongly.
And if we look back to your pregnancies, both of you had quite clear reasons why you, around your experience of baby loss, and you had quite definitive answers about what and why you lost a baby, which is a little bit different to some parents' experiences where it may be, for example, recurrent miscarriage, it could be stillbirth. There are some experiences that don't get that clarity of answers. But Talitha, how did you find your experience of pregnancy after having gone through what you did with the boys? How did it impact on your experience of pregnancy?
I think I don't think of myself as a very fearful person in general, but I was really afraid. I've never had a miscarriage before, but I really, like, almost every time I went to the bathroom, I expected there to be blood. Like every time we went to the doctor, I expected her to say there's no more heartbeat, which all of these things were kind of surprising because they weren't my story with my sons. But for some reason, I still just expected the pregnancy to end somehow. And so even I feel like when she was born, I was like a little surprised that like she was actually there. And she was totally fine. And even today, I think often I wonder like is she really okay? Because my story wasn't like that with my sons. They were never okay, I think. Even if we got some good news, it was always tempered with bad news. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Emma, for you, what was that experience of pregnancy after loss like for you? How did it influence what was going on for you?
I think for us, because obviously our news came throughout pregnancy, and then we were faced with information to make decisions on. The first reaction when I found out I was pregnant was just numb, was just nothing. It was just like very sort of distance. You know, for example, I wouldn't let my husband put his hand on my stomach as my stomach began to grow. I couldn't even put my hand on my own tummy as my tummy started to grow until I received some information about the baby that showed me that perhaps we weren't going to have genetic issues in this pregnancy with this baby. And then I suppose that started to grow. You know, it was always if, hopefully it was never when, until really close to the end. And even then, I remember having conversations with you about things that we had bought for the baby, because I could rationalize it if I could use it with a baby that was dead or alive, but I couldn't rationalize a purchase that I couldn't use with a baby that had died or lived. So, for example, buying baby clothes, I could rationalize that because whatever happened to my baby, I wanted to wrap my baby in something, dress my baby in something. With you know, with a bassinet, you know, I could have bought that in and put the baby in it, or, you know, but so I tried to rationalize a lot of my purchasing stuff with, regardless of what happens with this baby, these are things I will use with my baby no matter the outcome, which helped me step into mothering my baby in utero, because whatever happened, I was still their mum, and I still would want to do certain things, especially having gone through what we went through with Willow and not doing a lot of those things, and not doing a labour and delivery and meeting her and holding her. And so I suppose it lent me towards always thinking about what the worst would happen and how I would handle that differently, perhaps. So maybe that was, you know, pushing me to make a lot of those decisions as well. But it was very hard to believe it could actually happen. And I would always say to Gareth, even right at the end, I remember a week before my due date, I kept saying to Gareth, it dawned on me that whatever happened, the baby was coming out of me, and it was only coming out of me one of a couple of ways. And if that baby died, I just looked at Gareth and I said, what am I going to do if I have to birth by abdomen birth or vaginal birth a dead baby? What will I do? And I remember him saying, I can't tell you what's going to happen. And actually, this might sound backwards to a lot of people, but to me, it was very comforting. I can't tell you what's going to happen, but all I can tell you is you're not going to have to do any of it on your own. And actually, it was one of the most validating things that I heard, rather than it's going to be fine, it's definitely going to be okay, your baby's definitely going to be healthy, you know, all of those things. And like Talitha said, even with her after she was born alive, we still had lots of moments where we would second guess it, like, is there anything wrong with her? Is there something wrong with her that's genetically not okay? Maybe she isn't, maybe someone's missed something, and it's gonna, Gareth was actually really struggling with that, like going down the Google rabbit hole with normal newborn baby stuff, but maybe this means that they've missed something, so second guessing medical professionals. And it's been quite interesting how it's come through, actually.
Dr. Charlotte, in your experience of supporting women through this, and I'd love you to tell us and share with us a bit more about the support group that you're launching. You've heard from Talitha and Emma there, and I think it's fair to say that in my experience of supporting many doula clients through pregnancy after loss, there's a loss of that innocence that I think the marketing world perpetuates around what pregnancy and growing and creating a family looks like, that you don't get back, and that really impacts on a pregnancy. And I think we also live in a culture and community at the moment where we talk about a lot about manifestation and all of these sorts of things, and then there can be a fear around, if I think it, do I make it happen? There can become superstitions. There can be so many things that can compound anxiety in a pregnancy after loss. What's your experience? Tell us a little bit about what you are setting up at Sage, and what you would recommend families put in place during a pregnancy to support that emotional well-being.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I just want to start by saying I think Emma and Talitha put it into words beautifully, kind of, and I think what you both experienced is really not only really understandable, but really common, and what we kind of see so regularly kind of with women and couples navigating pregnancy after loss. So yeah, in terms of one of the things that we're offering at Sage clinics, myself and my colleague Lauren, who's another clinical psychologist, are setting up a support group for rainbow bumps and babies. So women that are experiencing pregnancy with a rainbow baby, so a baby that follows a loss, or that have already given birth to their rainbow baby. It's a supportive space for women to come together, to share kind of, the joys of their rainbow baby, whether that's during pregnancy or once baby's here, but also just to have a space to really acknowledge that this is really tough, and the fact that you are on this journey with your rainbow baby doesn't take away from the baby that you lost, and you want and need a space to acknowledge that, and to grieve alongside loving and cherishing kind of your rainbow baby. So we're aiming to set up, I guess, a supportive community for women. It's a support group, so we're there to hold the space, to be supportive for women, but we really want it to be kind of peer-led and be about women coming together and supporting each other and sharing kind of what has helped kind of get them through kind of those difficult times.
I think that's one of the things that is so important that we focus on within this session, is it's not just pregnancy after loss, it's also pregnancy and parenthood after loss, and what that looks like, because that in and of itself can feel really conflicting, because Emma, you sit here with both your baby girls, could our siblings, our sisters, and could have, with their age gap, existed at the same time in the same way, and yet there are other parents. Talitha, I think your gap's a little bit smaller, isn't it? But I certainly know from families there is definitely this complexity of, would this sibling be in the world if we hadn't lost that baby, and what that means, and holding space for that love, and that existence of complexity of emotion. Emma's spoken a little to that. Talitha, is that something that comes up for you as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think there are so many times where I look at Sylvie on her mat and she's like rolling over or something, and it's so exciting. But then I also think there should be 3, not 1. Even the the friend who was watching over her earlier today was saying, like, when she was playing with her, she was thinking there should be 3. I think that happens to us really often, that we just, we know that we're meant to have the 3 of them together here. And so as much joy as we have in being with our living daughter, we really feel, I think I read in the beginning that there's like an amputation type of feeling, that like a limb is missing. And we feel the same way about our sons.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It's I think there is such a physical aspect of baby loss as well, that there always feels that there is, as you say, a part missing, a limb missing. There's something that isn't there, that you having to learn and create that family around. Charlotte, within parenting after loss, obviously you are going to be, we know that grief is not something you ever get over. You learn to build a life around, and you're going to carry for and care for that grief always. And as Emma said, that this month for her is, one of the hardest baby loss awareness weeks she has navigated, and that's since having her rainbow baby. And what does that look like in terms of supporting siblings and supporting yourself to care for that grief, to recognize it, to have those big emotions come up? And this may be for families who had siblings at the time of their loss, or have had siblings subsequently. Caring for that and creating that kind of that dialogue within a family about the sadness and the love and the grief that will always sit alongside grieving for and caring for and loving this baby who isn't there. How do you weave that into that family dynamic? How do you support and explain that perhaps to siblings?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I really don't think there's a one size that fits all for every family. And I think that's why a family getting support, whether that's from someone like me as a clinical psychologist, someone kind of like you, Lala, or, all the various support groups and other forms of support that are out there, but giving a family a space for them to think about how they want it to be for their family. How do they want the child that they lost to be spoken about, to be remembered? And this kind of fits with what you were saying at the beginning, Emma and Talitha, of kind of that you had to, sadly, you kind of had to force your, your way of talking about your children kind of onto family and friends, because it made people feel uncomfortable. And I guess that's what I'd really encourage families to do, is to find a safe space and person or people to be able to think about how they want their child or children kind of that they've lost to be remembered and be spoken about. And that can change over time, and that's okay. And sometimes it's trial and error as well. It's testing out particular ways of talking about the children or child that they've lost with themselves, with family, with siblings, and finding your way through it. Just as grief isn't a linear process, finding your way through the grief and finding your way of talking about and remembering your child or children isn't linear, and it's okay for it to take time, and there to be trial and error, and for you to try something and think, gosh, I know that really worked for my friend or that woman at the support group, but that really doesn't sit right with me. That doesn't feel okay for me. That doesn't feel the right way of talking about my child. And then kind of going back and thinking, okay, let me find a different way. Let me find a new way, and that kind of experimentation. And I think what we've seen, I don't know what you'd say, Emma and Talitha, but that, over time you settle into a way of talking about and kind of remembering your child or children that feels comfortable. I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but feels right for you as a family.
It's a really interesting thing you bring up there, because actually both you, Talitha, and Emma have talked about the fact that other people have sometimes, maybe gaslighted is too heavy a word, but they have used their discomfort in your family narrative to kind of like create, to speak about it in a way that doesn't serve you. What I would be interested to hear, and again, we haven't got a speaker within this session actually, but thinking forward to the future, you've got adults at the moment where you have to kind of say, no, you know, we do have 3 children, we do have 2 children, and I want you to recognize that, and I want you to be able to say their name in the context of this is what our family looks like. Dr. Charlotte, and again, actually, Talitha and Emma, I'd really love your thoughts on this. As your children, and I know and love both of them at the moment, and they are, while they're babbling away, they haven't quite had to navigate having those conversations with friends and in nurseries and in schools when they're asked, do you have brothers and sisters? I wonder, you know, Emma, Talitha, if you've, at the moment, are those conversations you've had in your family with your partner, or things that you've given thought to about how you'd want that to be discussed in a nursery or in a school setting, so that you can, and so that your daughter, hopefully, you know, this is the next generation of children that hopefully are really expanding the conversation around baby loss, around different family dynamics and what that looks like. Emma, have you given thought to that? Is that something that you and Gareth have talked about?
Yeah, we have, and we have things for Willow around the house. So there's a watercolor picture of Willow on her last scan, that's up in our living daughter's bedroom, and she is always pointing at it and wanting to look at it, and we just speak very normally. And you know, like, I've walked out on Gareth before and he's saying, oh, that's your sister Willow, she lives in the stars, and that's just how we talk about it. And it'll be age appropriate, you know, as she gets older we will you know, talk about it, but it will be very matter of fact. You know, we will talk about birth and death, and that will be a normal part of life, in as much as if you saw an animal, a dead bird on the floor, oh, that's a bird that's died. I think it's important to have clear language with children, especially because I would never want her to think that, my living daughter to think, oh, if I go to sleep tonight I might not come back, or if my parents go to sleep tonight they might not come back. So I think using clear language with children that's in an age appropriate way, without graphic details when they're younger and things like that, is important, so that they don't fill in the gaps in the wrong way. You know, I think it's really important, and that's just my view on it. And we've got a book as well that's for our living daughter, that's all about her sister Willow and what happened, and the fact that she died in mummy's tummy because she wasn't very well. And you know, so these are things that we will just incorporate, and we do incorporate just into life.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think there are some families within our community that it's been so beautiful to see how embraced they've been in a school setting at sharing about their sibling, because we have things like Siblings Day come up, and that, you know, within this journey of baby loss that is forever part of a family, you know, those are difficult days to navigate as a family as well, in a society where we don't often recognize that in a comfortable sense. Charlotte, for parents perhaps who might be joining us now, or watching this at a later date, who have older children who are also navigating baby loss, and they're in a school setting, and they are in you know, of an age. We have a wonderful mum who's joined us today, called Fariha, who's spoken a lot about how beautifully memory making was led by her 11-year-old. In those settings, what can we do to support families, to support siblings, and to support teachers, communities, schools in being able to recognize siblings and baby loss within that context?
Yeah, I think there's so much that can be done, and I think that goes from individual conversations kind of within families to much wider kind of conversations and change that's needed in systems. And I guess there being much more awareness of and kind of acceptance around kind of baby loss, and comfortability in talking about it, so that we can get to the point where teachers and school staff will automatically think that when it's Sibling Day, people might want and need to be talking about siblings that aren't alive, and that becoming the norm, rather than people being, you know, caught off guard and then having to kind of fumble and sort of think about what to say. I guess my number one tip that I would give to families, and that I would encourage families to pass on to their children, is to learn from a really kind of young age that actually other people's uncomfortability, discomfort, not knowing what to say is not their responsibility to fix. It is that other person's responsibility to hold, to tolerate, and to manage. And I guess it's about teaching, as Emma was saying again, in an age appropriate kind of way to your children that, you know, talking about this will make some people feel uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about it and that it's a bad thing to talk about and that you should feel guilty. You talk about it in the way that feels right for you and is comfortable for you. But I guess we also want to equip them with the sad reality that there will be some people that are flabbergasted and, you know, even with really good intentions, just don't know what to say, or you know, blurt out something that's actually really insensitive. You know, let's face it, hopefully most people are coming from a good place and with good intentions, but sadly still will, you know, fumble around and end up saying something potentially really uncomfortable. So I guess it's just kind of teaching your children from a young age that this is a topic that we need to raise awareness about, and, you know, encouraging them to be an ambassador and to, you know, fly the flag and teach their friends about it, and get on board with, I guess, children's sort of creativity.
Well, and you
around
know
what
that it's not going to be the children either, because the children are just so amazing at being very pragmatic and quite fascinated by things. It's going to be the adults who will have, you know, who will have to sit and learn to sit with that discomfort as children lead the way in those conversations. Sorry, Emma, you're going to say something there?
Yeah, I was just going to share something that happened shortly after we had our TFMR and said goodbye to Willow. I was back in the UK and a few of my very close friends came to see us, and one of my friends brought her very young toddler daughter with her, and she'd obviously had a conversation with her before they got there, and it was obviously something along the lines of, we're going to see Auntie Emma today and she's going to be very sad because she had a baby in her tummy and her baby was sick and her baby died. So when people die, people are really sad because they love them so much. And that must have gone on before, because when she came into the room, her daughter was like, Emma's really sad because her baby died in her tummy, and that is sad, isn't it? And it was like, all, you know, and I was just so taken aback. I was so moved by this toddler's words to me. It was so, you know, more comforting than some words from adults I received. And it just showed me that actually, if we, you know, can understand that these young people, they deserve to know about life in an age appropriate way that feels safe, so that they're not left wondering, filling in the blanks, scared. You know, she was very, well, she handled me better than most adults did, you know. It was just something I thought I'd share because it was almost quite a remarkable experience for me in that moment. And I think it was only 3 days or 4 days after I'd said goodbye, so I was really in the thick of it, and she, you know, was just a breath of fresh air really on that day for me.
Yeah, you know what, it's really, when we think about the sort of, we've got this sort of I don't know, 70-year period of generation that just falls in this gap of the fact that if you take it back to our grandparents' generation, birth and death would have happened in the home. You'd have seen it more. It wouldn't be so frightening. It would be part of life. It would have been something that we experience. Now it happens all, certainly out here in a hospital behind closed doors, and it's become a very, we fear what we don't know. And having these conversations and opening this up and empowering siblings and the next generation to be able to talk in a way that doesn't compound fear and that helps to kind of break down those social discomforts around sitting with topics like baby loss is really quite incredible, to change that back to kind of reducing some of the fear and being able to talk about it, being able to have discussions. You know, we were talking earlier about the fact that I don't think many people move overseas. We're in a beautifully diverse culture here in the UAE, and largely an expat community. I don't think many people move overseas and think about what they would do if something happened to one of them, unless they're talking about their wills and from that point of view. But we don't have those discussions. We probably should have those discussions, but we don't. And we certainly don't assume that if we are going to be there over the course of our family creating process, that we're likely to have a loss. And if we do, what does that look like? And what do we want to do in those scenarios? They're not conversations we have. And maybe there's an extreme to that, is perhaps, hopefully we can have a good element of hope in there. But, those are conversations that are so uncomfortable for the vast majority of people to have, and seeing that in a child, they are so incredibly pragmatic within that. Have you got any books, Emma, within your collection, or you, Talitha, already that you have that are sort of special to reading to your surviving babies around that experience of, of loving a sibling or having a sibling that aren't here for them to see?
Yeah, I'm definitely working on creating a collection, but we do have one that was given to us as a gift on Jose and Malachi's first birthday, or the anniversary of their birthday. And it is not really a book about siblings who passed away necessarily, but the story is basically of a little boy who his mom was pregnant and then the baby passed away, and it's just like the father just explained to him just like as life goes on, and I think that has been a really, Sylvie she doesn't understand English, I guess, yet, but I think it's a really beautiful book because we don't often see these stories in any type of book. And so for that to just be in the story is really special, and I think will be very useful to us in the future.
Brilliant. And Emma, how about you?
Well, the book that I mentioned a bit earlier, my friend found there's a company online, you can actually tailor it to your story, exactly how and when in pregnancy or after pregnancy you experienced the loss of a baby, and you can put names in it. So she had it so it's all for our specific circumstances for our family. So I think it's going to be a great book. I've not been able to read it yet. I've struggled. This is something in parenting after loss that's come through for me. It took me probably 6 or more months to be able to read my living daughter a storybook, because it's something I've always dreamt of doing. And it was so overwhelming to me to be able to sit down and read a story to a living child that it took me months and months and months to be able to do it. And it's still something I struggle with now. So it's like, it's weird, of all the areas that I'm really struggling, reading a nighttime story is really, really hard for me to not be completely overwhelmed with emotion, so I'm still practicing that. So yeah, books, they're there and I'm taking my time, but Gareth reads to her every night and I'm there, but it's for me to get the words out, I struggle.
Thank you for sharing that. And it just shows how continued and how diverse the challenges are with pregnancy and parenthood after loss. If we take it back a little bit to pregnancy, you both talked a little bit about having that awareness that the worst can happen, that nothing's guaranteed once you've lost that kind of innocence of expectation that the marketing world and that's put out there. And because baby loss conversation is still not in that mainstream, and I think a big part of that is because people fear that they can manifest it, or they're going to conjure it up by talking about it as well, which is then very silencing for the community of baby loss families. And we know that 1 in 4 people who are going to create a family are likely to experience baby loss within that. So it's extraordinary that we are so silent on it still. But if I ask you, Talitha, was there something that within your pregnancy and within that experience and when that anxiety came out, were there things, self-care practices or mental and emotional support that you put in place in order to kind of give you that scaffolding through that pregnancy experience?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the many beautiful things that I experienced in my pregnancy with Silve was that I had the same doctor that I had with Jose and Malachi. And I really don't know what her bereavement training is, but she was really supportive. I think I was telling you recently that even when I was having the anesthesia done for my C-section, the doctor said, think about your baby. And then she like swooped in and she was like, think about all your children. And so that was just like really sweet. And so all throughout the pregnancy, she was really supportive. And then I think as we had different conversations about our family with friends, it was easy to identify who was on our team and who was more concerned with their idea of what our family should be like. And so I think I really leaned into the support and friendship of the people that were willing to include Hosea and Malachi and Silve in the conversation, which was, yeah, so hopeful for me.
That's really lovely. It's wonderful to hear that, because I think a lot of people can go the other way and want to have a blank slate and a different care team and things like that. But for you, feeling so held and supported by your doctor is really beautiful to hear. And I hope that they get to watch this and hear that from you as well, because I'm sure that's incredibly validating for the compassion that they put in, and hopefully taking that forward to every family that they support. Emma, for you, what did that scaffolding for your well-being, your mental and emotional well-being look like in that pregnancy following loss?
For me, very similarly, really, just making sure that I put myself in safe spaces, safe emotional spaces, and avoiding anything that the minute it didn't feel safe, I'd just avoid it. Because I think you're in some sort of survival mode in pregnancy after loss. I certainly was. Just getting through the next hurdle, the next test, the next, hoping to get past the next checkpoint to, okay, well, this might be a healthy baby, a pregnancy that can go all the way, and maybe a baby that can come home. And just breaking it down. So for me, I found the first trimester incredibly difficult. So at that point, it was like surviving initially, like minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, and then it was appointment to appointment. And then I got a little bit of respite after sort of 20 weeks and in the end of the second trimester. And then for me at the end, it sort of ramped up again. And my tolerance for how far in the future I could look and feel confident that we might get there got smaller and smaller again the closer we got to the end. Because there was that feeling of, we're so close, please don't let this all get taken away now. And also a feeling of responsibility. Like I can remember going into you and our doctor, I think I was at 35 weeks or something, and in my mind, just get the baby out now so I can see where the baby is, I can see what they're doing. I don't think I can tolerate this being inside me anymore. To no, leave me alone, let me do this all the way I want to do it, which is to just go into spontaneous labor, hopefully. And and I really yo-yoed around that, and I even felt quite in some aspects like, am I being selfish by not wanting to be induced? Am I gonna be the reason that this baby suddenly dies? And then it's all, it was really, my head was in a spin towards the end. And I know that we met quite a few times and spoke a few times, and I was really in a spin about what to do, because I was really thinking, I could be the reason that this baby doesn't come home, and that's just, how do I live with that? And I imagine there may be thoughts that I wouldn't have had I not had the loss experience before, or maybe I might have, but just not that strong and not that as intrusive as they were.
And while I wouldn't ever wish to insert myself in anyone's story, I will insert myself a little bit as a piece of scaffolding in Emma's story, because Emma had a doula. And so I think, obviously I'm biased, but I think, again, that can be a level of that kind of emotional scaffolding. I often talk about, if you have been through loss, we know that, Charlotte can speak to this, I'll get you, but we know that obviously that perinatal period of time is a particularly vulnerable time for mental health anyway. And then especially when you have a history of that, and especially if you've been through loss. So I do think there is a lot to be said for looking at, okay, what scaffolding looks right for me so that I can go into this and go through this experience as supported as possible. And does that look like professional support? Does that look like having a doula? Does that look like doing some hypnobirthing work that's specific, again, for pregnancy after loss? Those sorts of things can be really helpful. Charlotte, I'll come to you a little bit on that. And if you're kind of creating a little bit of that plan of, what can that scaffolding look like? What would be prudent of things to consider? Obviously, appreciating that everyone's very, very individual here.
Yeah, no, it's really important. I think a lot of it has already been said, that I think it's really important to think with that woman, her partner, about kind of what do they want their experience of care during pregnancy and the birth and the postnatal period to look like. So like you said, Talitha, for you, it was so important to have that same doctor, and that sounds really important for you. For some women, it will be really important for it to be different. So I guess it's providing a space for the woman to kind of think about what might be the parts of the previous pregnancy and the loss that are most triggering and most painful. What would be the harshest reminders for you? So what do we need to do to protect you during those moments? So does it need to be a different doctor, a different hospital, a different kind of mode of delivery? Does it need to be hypnobirthing because you didn't do that last time, or you did do it last time and it brought kind of great comfort? So I guess a lot of it is thinking about the practicalities of the scaffolding of the care kind of throughout the process. I think it's also thinking about who you talk to, what you share kind of with who, and just to be really clear, this isn't about kind of we should hide our experiences because it's this bad, shameful thing that we shouldn't talk about. Not at all, but it's thinking about who it's helpful to talk to what about. And not feeling as though you have to share everything with everyone about your journey, because some people, they won't understand. And some people, I guess you can predict that they'll have unhelpful responses. So just really thinking about, when people ask you questions about how's pregnancy going or how are you feeling about birth, kind of to maybe prepare kind of a generic statement that you can use, that you just don't have to kind of get into things, that is enough that person feels that you've answered the question, and then they're not going to kind of come back with any other questions. Something else we do a lot of kind of in therapy is walking alongside that person or that couple, trying to help them find the balance between being in touch with the grief and holding some hope. And Emma, I think you spoke about this kind of beautifully earlier, that really understandably for most women navigating a pregnancy after a loss, it can be really hard to hold on to any hope. And because of that, it can be really hard to bond with baby. So really trying to kind of work out with that woman, where can they feel, or do they feel able to allow themselves to feel some hope and excitement? And how can we do that in a way that feels helpful and contained and positive for them, whilst also holding and acknowledging and working through the grief? And I think the biggest part of that, which is my final point, sorry, and I'm talking for a while now, but it sounds so minor, but it's actually major, but is really validating where the woman is at. Because I think every woman that I've worked with in pregnancy after loss, they kind of will say like, I don't know why I'm feeling like this, in terms of feeling sad still, or feeling anxious, like I should just be happy, I should just be excited about the baby, everyone's telling me that everything's okay, so why can't I just be pleased and excited for their arrival? And that's because of the pressure that society puts on us. Whereas I think, it's been articulated so well here today, of course women would feel like that. Of course they would feel sad. Of course they would feel anxious. Of course they would feel confused and a complex mix of feelings. And when we make space for women to share those feelings and we validate them, and this doesn't have to be through therapy, this can be through everyday conversations, that is so powerful. And I think that is one of the things that shifts things the most for women, is when you just let them feel what they feel.
Definitely. And I think that's something actually that's really important to mention in here. And I will share within the Instagram, and we have it on the website, is that we do have a sister community at Love Through Loss. We have the Rainbow Pregnancy and Parenthood community. So if this is your experience, if this is what you are navigating, please know that that sister community exists, and we can share the details. We have got a couple of attendees here. If you have any questions that you want to put in the Q&A chat, please do. And we will do our best to answer those as well. And something that you were just, when we were just actually talking about that, I was thinking back to, Emma, when we were going into your birth, and, actually, through supporting you, it was a lot of, what is the language that you want me to use? And it was, hopefully when, and that sort of evolved. I think at the beginning it was sort of a bit if, and then it was hopefully when, and it was a dynamic process. And the other thing was writing, writing that birth plan and putting on it, the things that you, my care team, need to know about me. These are my trauma triggers. Please don't ask me, this is not my first baby. Please acknowledge her sister. These are the things you need to be aware of. And I think this is something that we've seen a lot, we've spoken to in previous years. Charlotte, you just touched on it beautifully then, about there'll be specific areas that feel potentially more triggering. And I know for quite a few families who've had to go through an induction of labor, it might be the sensation of the waters being broken, for example. Things like that, again, how do we create a safe space within that, those fears, those anxieties in a subsequent birth, and whether that is through a different mode of birth, or whether that is a very different supported experience, is so important to navigate. We've got one question that's come in now. Is there any advice you can give to preparing and buying things for a rainbow baby, and how to cope with it if people buy gifts for a baby, even though we don't feel ready to buy anything yet? Emma, you spoke a little to this before. Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
The first thing I would say is tell people, please don't buy us gifts until we're ready. Number one. You tell people to go at your pace, and don't be afraid to tell people what you need. You don't have to tolerate sort of being ambushed by other people's excitement. And what can sometimes happen with pregnancy after loss, and I see it in the support groups, is people in the wings are almost waiting for, in a pregnancy after loss, for you to be excited, because they're like, oh, they're literally cheerleaders waiting in the wings to cheer you on, and it maybe is not what you need. So it's okay to say to people, look, I love that you're holding all this hope for me, but please understand that's not where I'm at right now. You hold it for me and keep it if you want. and please don't, if you don't want gifts, please don't buy us any gifts. Or some people say, these are, if you want to buy us gifts, please keep it at your place. Don't even tell us about it, and we'll let you know when we're ready. So you don't have to be ambushed, is what I'm going to say. So be brave, be bold, say what you need, say what you don't need, more importantly. And how do you feel courage to buy things for your baby? For us, I started with a baby grow that I thought, no matter what happens with this baby, whether my baby lives or dies, I'm their mum, and I'm going to want to put them in something. And that helped me buy that first baby grow. That's just my own personal starting point. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And Talitha, I'll just come to you with the same in your experience. Is there something that you would share within that?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of stuff from Jose and Malachi. We didn't even realize how much stuff we had until we were just looking through the house, and we were like, how did we even amass all these things? Because they were born so early. But I think that people would ask us, like, what do you need, or what do you want? And I think, thankfully, everyone waited until the baby shower, which I didn't really want a baby shower at first, but my husband encouraged me just to go for it, and to have it be done in a way that would respect our sons and honor them as well, which I think it really happened that way. So I was very grateful for that. And I think that most of our friends were really good at giving us the things that we wanted, like just diapers, not so much of like cute things that would fill up our house, but things that were just essential. Because at some point um I had to reckon with the fact that like I don't really want to buy anything, but like the baby can't come and have nothing. Like she has to have a diaper. Or yeah, she has to have a bed. And so at that point I think is when people gave us more things. And yeah.
Thank you. No, that makes total sense. And the great thing is we are in Dubai, where you can get so much delivered so quickly. So even if it is compiling a list and putting it to the side until you feel ready, and even if that's after when the baby's born, you take it at your pace. We do need to wrap up, but a really important question's just come in. I'm just going to finish with this for you, Charlotte. But how to cope with the guilt that comes with the idea of trying for a baby after loss?
It's so difficult. I would love to give you a straightforward answer of do X and Y, and you won't feel that guilt, but sadly it's not that straightforward. I guess the thing I'd say is it's normal and it's understandable to feel that way. I'm not saying that you should feel guilty, but I'm saying that it's really normal to feel that way. And I guess it's thinking about how to find space in your heart, in your mind, in your family's life for the baby that you lost, and know that trying for another baby doesn't mean that you're reducing that space, or that baby that you lost means any less or any different to you. And it's, I guess it's kind of, maybe it would be helpful to speak to other people that have been in a similar situation and have gone on to have rainbow babies, to know that it's possible to find that space in your mind and find that space in your heart for both babies. But I'd also say give yourself time, kind of, and I know that can feel so hard, because obviously I don't know what your circumstances are, and everyone's circumstances are different, and people can understandably kind of not want to wait. But sometimes emotionally it's best to wait and just give yourself some time to grieve, and just see kind of if in time you find that you're feeling a bit more ready. Yeah.
Thank you
and
so
just
much.
good luck with your journey.
Well, and if you are in Dubai, please, we'll be sharing all the details of Sage's new Rainbow Pregnancy, Rainbow Bumps and Babies group. And we have the Rainbow Pregnancy and Parenthood community out here. Thank you so much, Emma, for entrusting us with your journey, with your two beautiful baby girls, and also to you, Talitha, for today sharing your boys and of course your beautiful rainbow baby girl with us today too. We are so grateful to have you here, and thank you, Dr. Charlotte, for your input as well. It's been so valuable, and we're so grateful to see another incredible support group facilitated by Sage coming into the community and into the baby loss space. So thank you very much for being part of it.